All right, hello out there, everybody, and welcome to the stream. So today we're going to go over the top 5 questions that I get from game developers, or really the top 5 that came in the last couple days. There are some really interesting questions that I think will apply to most game developers or most people that want to be game developers. So if you're kind of in that boat, well, I guess we'll start off with the ones for people who are interested in getting into game development. But if you're interested in any of this stuff, you have questions, you want to ask them, there's a link down below you can ask, and maybe I'll answer some more next week. And also don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that stuff so that you get alerted when I do answer your questions or other interesting ones that I guess, well, maybe you find interesting. Anyway, thanks again, everybody, for joining. And I just wanted to say hello if you're here live, and hello if you watch this later, too. Don't forget to hit those buttons, and thanks again. All right, let's just jump over to the desktop and start going into some actual questions. And I've got a slightly different layout here, so forgive the big empty space right above my head. I hadn't figured out exactly what I wanted to do there or how I want to rearrange things, but I'm going to stop wasting so much space on the screen. If you have some good ideas for what I should put there, by the way, let me know. I'm kind of curious what I should drop up there. Maybe some things about what we're going to talk about, upcoming questions. I don't know. If somebody's got a good idea for a layout there, yeah, just share it with me. All right, so let's get into questions. And the first question, which actually came in a lot. So I have 3 versions of this question that popped up, but out of the questions that I got, this one came in more than anything else. And it was about how to switch into a professional game development role. And it says, let's just read through Manuel's question first, because it was, I think, the first one of these that came in. It said, how could I switch my professional profile from a full stack developer to a game developer? I'm skilled in Unity and game development in general. Okay, so I mean, that's a good general question on how to make a jump from doing full stack development, which is likely web development, doing front and back end stuff there, into doing actual game development. And how should I make the switch? I don't want to answer that just yet, though, because these next 2 questions are kind of follow ups that dive more into detail on the question and what the answer will be. So the next one says, I'm an industrial engineer working full time. I'm taking your courses and I want to change careers to game dev. What jobs should I start looking for, or when should I start looking for jobs? And that one came from Diego. And then one more right below it says, so I'm a senior software engineer, lead with 9 years of desktop dev experience. I've done game dev on the side, on and off, with nothing released. I'd like to apply for jobs in the game industry. Let's just scroll down here in the game industry, but I don't have professional expertise in the industry tech stack. So working as a senior software engineer, maybe doing some full stack stuff like that. Maybe, well, it says desktop, so probably a lot of enterprise stuff, doing C# or Java or something similar. And then let's continue on. It says, do you have any suggestions for what kind of positions to apply for? I don't feel like I'd be able to perform as a senior dev lead when I don't have the domain context. But starting at square one doesn't feel like it acknowledges the software dev skills that I do have. And that one came from Narmada. So what would I answer to this question? Because this is like, I wanted to read all of it because it's kind of a big overlapping question where you want to know how to get into game development and what types of jobs, especially coming as somebody with a little bit of experience, or maybe with not very much, no professional experience, but with development experience or industry experience or something very similar. So let's just start with how to switch. And the first thing that you're going to need to do is really obviously just start actually applying for game dev jobs. Now, the game dev jobs that you're going to be able to apply for, so say you've got a little bit of experience or you feel somewhat skilled with the game engine, right? Maybe you're in this first boat like Manuel. You've got a little bit of Unity knowledge or enough Unity knowledge that you feel comfortable with it, but you're not working in it full time, right? You're building things on the side, or like some of the other people who wrote in, you're building games for fun, in your spare time, but not actually as a job. So the first thing I would do there is start actually just applying for game dev jobs. Start applying for general game programmer jobs, things that are gameplay programmer positions, Unity positions. I would look at a lot of the mobile opportunities and also some of the, there's still quite a few VR and AR related positions. Now, one of the easy stepping stones into game development from this full stack setup is going through some of these more enterprisey systems that or enterprisey applications that use game engines in the back end. And this is also applies down here for our last question asker, because if you already have some industry experience, you already have programming experience, and then you're building out maybe a virtual reality application or an augmented reality application that's got a relatively limited scope and it's not a game, it's actually just an application, then you may actually be able to qualify at that senior engineer level for these jobs. You may not want to go right into the lead one if you haven't done anything related to the industry at all or the tech stack at all, but you may be able to go in at the senior level knowing that most of the stuff that you do in the beginning isn't going to be game engine specific or game specific. It'll be specific to the types of problems that you're solving for the business, but you're not gonna need a whole lot of game industry experience. But you'll start building that up, and you'll start building up experience with that tech stack, working on those types of projects. And again, these are things like simple VR interaction things, where you can interact with some object that's a real world object and simulate it. A lot of the jobs I've seen for these are like simulators for big commercial projects where it's just too expensive to train somebody on the real thing. So they want to see if they can cheapen that up or make it easy to train them multiple times in a virtual environment by giving them a $500 headset instead of letting them play with multi-million-dollar equipment. That kind of thing. There's lots of those types of positions out there and companies out there as just one starting point, though. But if you want to get into actual just game dev jobs and you want to start applying for those, I would look for jobs that are specifically looking for gameplay programmers or engineers that are doing a little bit of everything, because you're probably not going to know what to specialize in. You're not really going to have any specialties, and they'll be a lot harder to get. The general positions would be a little bit easier. Now, if you don't have a lot of experience and you're not in this boat of 9 years of experience where you need to go in at a senior position and you kind of have something, because with 9 years of a desktop dev experience, you should at the very least be able to get in at a mid-level game development position with some game dev experience, not industry experience, but some game programming experience. Like you've coded a little bit, you've written a little bit, you understand the engine and can kind of work around in it. That should be able, with 9 years of experience, you probably, assuming that it's relatively related and you can translate it, you should be able to get straight into those positions without going in at the lower positions. Now, there are, of course, for people who just want to get in and you're less worried about it, just dive in straight into the junior positions. Obviously, again, if you're already at a senior level, it's really hard to make that jump back to the junior positions, but generally the junior positions don't require a whole lot of experience and knowledge. They don't expect that you know how to code a game. They expect that you know how to solve relatively straightforward problems and deliver things, and communicate and learn. That's really the thing that they care about with junior developers, making sure that you can learn well, you can grow and get better with the team. So I'm going to just continue on to the next question because it's somewhat related, I guess, and goes, I guess, back in the opposite direction. So this question came from Winston, and it says, I was a game developer and I lost my job due to the recent virus. Can I be able to work as a game developer? Can I still be able to work as a game developer, or should I just try to do something else because things are tough and it's hard to get a game dev job? Should I switch careers? Now, this one I felt like, because there were so many questions about getting into the game industry, it was kind of important to answer. Like, should you switch? Should you go out of the game industry and get into actual enterprise development? Hold on a second. Let me make myself nice and big here. I feel like I'm blabbing with a little bit of me and a lot of text on the screen. So the answer to this question is I would give it a try. I would definitely consider it and give it a try. Not because I think that you should leave game development or because I think that game development isn't the way to go. In general, I recommend game development over enterprise stuff for almost everybody. I think that most people that I know prefer it and would enjoy it more. So they like the day-to-day more and they just like what they do more. But should you switch careers? I would say yes, and the reason for that is so that you can actually see what the difference is. Not only will you see what the difference is, like you'll see what it's like day to day working on an enterprise app versus working on a game. You'll see what those interactions are like, who you're talking to, how you're talking to product owners and people that are working with the project or working with the product that you're building versus the players of your game. It's a totally different experience, and it's definitely something that's, I'd say, worth trying out and worth getting into, but I wouldn't consider it like a permanent career switch. In fact, I've done this myself multiple times where I've switched back and forth between game development jobs and enterprise jobs. And I feel like I've gained a lot of insight and knowledge from that. Just understanding how things are done in different contexts allows you to kind of bring some of the best of the both worlds together, or sometimes it'll lead you to bring the worst of both worlds together, but a lot of times it'll allow you to bring the best of both worlds together. Kind of get the insight from enterprise stuff, the things that enterprise developers know and the things that game devs know, and start building those together. But it also expands out your just job hunting capabilities. If you've got experience doing enterprise stuff and game stuff, you're gonna have no problem at all getting a game or any programming job. Well, obviously it depends on where you are and who you are specifically, but relative, you'll have a much easier time getting a job than if you don't have experience in both of those. If you just got a little, even if it's just like you worked, a year on some enterprise project, it will make it a lot easier if you need to get another enterprise job in the future. And it's, to be honest, not very hard. I've found that sometimes in the enterprise space, though, people think that the game dev knowledge that you have, or that the game programming knowledge doesn't apply, or that maybe it doesn't fit, or it's not useful. That's actually not really the case. What you'll find is that you don't understand the libraries and the frameworks that they use, which you'll want to understand and get ready for before you're interviewing for any of those positions. But all the rest of it, you're going to have no problem with at all. Yeah, I mean, it's programming enterprise stuff on a whole, like on average, I would say is easier than programming games. Not always, obviously, there's exceptions to everything, but just on average, it's a bit less complicated. There's less going on, less moving parts, and less people that you have to worry about pleasing. So usually it's quite a bit easier. So I would say consider it, look at the positions, and then don't feel like you're stuck there, though. Don't feel like you can't jump back in. If you're having a hard time finding a game dev job, or you're just kind of curious about it, go jump into something, try it out for a year, see if you like it. Maybe you'll love it more. Maybe you'll get a renewed love for game development. That's kind of what happened for me. I have fun at first jumping into enterprise stuff, and then after a year or so, I'm like, it was interesting and it's cool, like solving all these problems really fast and stuff. But now I still don't get to share anything with people. I still don't get to show off my games or do any of the fun stuff. So you'll probably miss that. All right, let's go on to question number 3, which I guess kind of ties into these again. And it was about certification. It says, I'm working as an engineer in factories and I wanted to switch my career to game development. I have a programming background and I've developed games through Unity as a side project. Recently, I saw that Unity has a programmer certification beta exam. Should I take the exam to try to get the certification? Oh, this came from Weimann, and it's one of the questions where I feel like I might be a little bit biased here when I answer it, and I should probably disclaim that a little bit. So first off, I would say yes, I would definitely jump into it, and I've seen the certification exam, and I think that if you pass that certification exam, it definitely does show a good understanding of knowledge. And I'd say the same is true for the associate certification exam for at a junior level. They show a good understanding of the core fundamentals of Unity and of a lot of game development. It's somewhat generalized, but it's pretty tight on there. And I know that because I actually got to contribute to those quite a bit, and it was a lot of fun. And I think that there's a lot of value in them. To be fair, and I want to be completely honest here, It depends a lot on where you're applying, though, whether or not it's going to make a difference. So if you want it just for the get your foot in the door, and maybe get a better chance at getting a job, it's going to help at some places. There are some places where certifications matter a lot. People care about them, and there's somebody on the team who filters by that kind of stuff. They see that and they go, okay, yeah, they're certified too, and it bumps them up. There's some places where it won't matter at all. They're not going to care. They're going to see that and go, okay, who cares? I don't give a crap, right? The one difference that you're going to get at both places, though, is that if you were able to go through the certification and pass it, you're able to do the certification and you pass the test, you're going to get a bit of extra confidence there. And I think that will, at the very least, help in your interview process and your job searching prospects. So if you fail it, you'll get a good idea of what's wrong and what you're missing and what kinds of things to learn about and kind of grow with before you go in and do your interviews, or what kinds of things to study for right before you go in for your interviews, because it's going to show you kind of your weak points. But if you pass it, you're going to have a little bit of extra, just I think, confidence in going in there. So I would definitely consider it. Again, I wouldn't expect it to be an automatic just win, like you're going to automatically get a job because you took it, but it's definitely got a couple good benefits there. And so there's the programmer certification, and I think that one, yeah, it's beta, sounds right. I've lost track of timelines there. And then they've got the associate one too, which is the easier one. It's kind of the lower junior level. The programmer one is kind of the more mid-level. I think it's aimed at 2 years of experience in Unity, so somebody who's been working in it in 2 years. I could be off on that. You'd have to look at the official papers there on what it says, but I think that's about right. And then the other one's like fresh out of college, no actual game dev experience, or maybe game dev experience on your own without the college side. All right, let's jump on to some actual code related questions. So this one was about singletons and messes and just overall project architecture and project planning. So let's just I guess I'll just read right through it. It says, do you usually set up singleton managers for smallish projects? Audio, scene loader, game, UI managers, etc. Came from Charles. Okay, and the answer to that is for smallish projects, almost always. But let's read the second part of it, though, because without the second part, it's not a very the answer is not very interesting. It's just a yes or no. So I'll go through the other one. So it says, hi, I have an issue I have an issue that I find happens often where I have some logic like target.handle attack and I pass in an attack. And in that target method, or in that, I guess, the handle attack method on the target, there will always be some things like vfx.play damage particles or audio manager.instance.play some fx. And my code starts out cleanly, but slowly gets sprinkled all over the places with these static singleton instance method calls. This makes the code tightly coupled and also breaks my unit tests. How can I architect systems where core logic's not coupled to all the video gamey stuff like animations, VFX, and sounds? Thank you, Anonymous. And the Anonymous handle in there was a lot more interesting than I pasted in. But I'll continue on. So the answer here, again, for the first part was yes. I do generally just put together a singleton for a lot of these systems. But you can run into that problem if you start referencing and calling all of those singletons from your code, like our anonymous questioner mentioned. So what can you do to solve that? There are two kind of top solutions that are generally used. The first one is not the one I'm going to recommend for this solution, and that's to just inject your dependencies. So you could inject them in, then you can run your unit tests against them. You just store them off, essentially. Instead of having them as a singleton, you pass them in somewhere in a setup method, an initialize method, and you hand it the audio manager, you hand it the VFX thing, and you hand it all of those components, and then it's not finding them or referencing a singleton to them. Not the way that I would probably recommend it for this type of setup, though. Instead, what you probably want to do here is switch to an event-based system, something using which is generally referred to as the observer pattern, and set up events that fire off when an attack hits. so that your audio manager is listening for when something plays, or some system at least, maybe it's not necessarily your audio manager, but a system that's integrating your audio manager and your attack system, or it could be on your audio manager, is just listening for an attack and then playing that sound effect when an attack fires off. So that way, if nothing's registered for that event, nothing's registered for the attack firing off, then it won't play anything. But if you have it listening for, hey, an attack fired, this is the attack, or this is the attack's sound effects data that you care about in that event that's getting passed in, then that can fire off and it can be completely independent. And your audio manager still needs to know about your attack system, but your dependencies are now inverted into, I guess, what I would consider the proper way, so that you're not referencing your instance singletons throughout all of your code. Now, this might not even be an issue, though. I mean, if it's breaking your unit tests, it's an issue, right? Because that's definitely a problem. You've got unit tests there, and it's breaking them, it's an issue. If it's not breaking your unit tests, you don't have any unit tests, and the scale of your game is small, like this smallish projects, then it may not be an issue that's worth fixing. But it sounds like in this case you're getting to this scenario where things are getting bigger, it's breaking, and it's actually a problem. In that case, yeah, observer pattern, or again, dependency injection as another option. But I would probably go with observer and just have it listen for events for when these things happen, and then play the particle effects or play the audio effects or play anything else. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be your audio manager class. It could be another class that's integrating the two of them, listening to the events and then firing off the things to the audio manager, or it could be in the audio manager. Let's go down to one more question about advanced patterns and resources. So this one, actually, you know what? Before we do that, I want to jump up just a second. So let's go back up to the first question. There's a little bit of talk in chat too about how getting a job is also part luck. Rolf mentioned that. And that is without a doubt true. Getting a job in the game industry, or getting a job anywhere, is going to be largely related to luck, social skills, talking to people, and who you know. Especially getting into tech jobs. Knowing people is the best thing that you can do. It's going to make more of a difference than any of the other things. So setting up a great portfolio, super important. Knowing somebody that works at the company, better. Knowing how to code, great, super important. Knowing somebody that works at the company, probably still better. It's just having friends or people that can refer you to positions. It makes a huge difference, or that can vouch for your skills personally. It makes a giant difference. So if you're looking for these jobs, one of the key things that you can do is, let's go to the two key things. One, talk to people. Talk to a lot of people. Talk to people. Be kind to people. Be helpful to people. Just don't be a dick is the general rule. And the more people that you know, the more likely you are that somebody's going to reach out and say, hey, looking to fill this position. Hey, are you available? Or do you know anybody, or anything else? Speaking of which, I get constant emails from people that are looking to hire people. So if you happen to be an amazing 2D artist, hit me up. I know a couple people that are actually looking to hire 2D artists, and I've got a couple people I want to refer. But also, just if any of my subscribers are great 2D artists, let me know. Send me an email, and I would love to forward off your stuff as well. And then the second most important thing for getting a job is actually applying for the goddamn jobs. Most of the time people sit around, they get fear, and I think that they don't apply for things. They don't try. They never actually go in and submit the application. Now, when you submit it, don't be lazy with it. I think part of the problem is that people don't want to go through the work with it. You actually have to go through the work of setting up your resume or CV so that it looks clean and it matches to kind of the job. And when I say that, I mean you want your top skills that apply to the job to be up at the top, get rid of the things that don't apply, kind of focus it and highlight it towards the job, and write a cover letter towards the job about what it is that you can do for that job. Do it for a bunch of them, do it for all of the ones that you're interested in, and actually apply, even the ones that you think you're not qualified for. And this is where a lot of people just kind of fail. They don't apply for things because they think, hey, I'm underqualified, I'll never get it. And I mean, My wife was just talking about this yesterday. We were talking to the kids about how if you don't ask, you don't try, like the answer is always no. You'd never get any job that you didn't apply for. So, well, very, very rarely do you ever get a job that you didn't apply for. So you need to actually apply for the jobs and get out there and try it. I mean, the worst case that happens is you hear a no and no feedback at all. Slightly better case is you hear a no and you get some feedback of why and what's missing. And if you get a no and they're willing to tell you why and what's missing, hey, just take that feedback, understand it, and learn from it. Could be just not a good fit with that company. It could be some skill or something that they thought they wanted more of and they thought was more important that you don't, or you weren't able to at least convey well enough. So you should practice and focus on that thing. Anyway, I want to shut up about the jobs now, but I saw the chat in there and I thought it was kind of important to mention. Talk to people and actually apply for things makes a huge, huge difference. More so than just about anything. And I mean, talk to people. If you want to switch into out of game industry jobs or into game industry jobs, talk to people that you know that are somewhat related to those things, that work in those companies. They may not work in the exact position that you work in. Maybe they're an artist at a game company or a manager at some tech company or something else. Talk to them and see what's going on there. See if maybe you can make some new connections and find some other opportunities there. All right, let's go down to question number 5 now. Advanced pattern resources. So I'm going to take a drink and then we'll go through this one. This is, I think, the last one and probably the most Cody technical one. Actually, I'm not sure why I made this the last one now after looking through it again. Okay, so it says this one is long for context and you can hopefully shape it better for your show. I did not. You're welcome. I've been creating a game as a hobby for about a year. I've completely ignored your excellent advice about starting small, but I have a pretty clear plan and I'm having fun. That's great. And not every time, you don't always have to start small. Sometimes you can start big and build a big project and keep it going and get it done. A lot of times it's just harder that way, but it can happen. It's just on the easier path, I'd say start small. So it says, for example, saving game state while referring to in-game assets. I ended up using addressables and saving the addressable IDs with the serialized data. Another example is loading a scene from saved data. Lots of tutorials and videos have a fairly narrow scope, so my question is, what are some good resources for learning some of these more advanced and maybe, oh, sorry, somebody walking by, compositional aspects of game dev? So, this is kind of an interesting question because this is something that I feel like there's not a lot of out there. And the only place that you're going to find really kind of in-depth details on this stuff comes from generally from devlogs. I mean, you'll find some information that you can, a lot of information that you can kind of piece together without a doubt. There's lots of stuff out there on how to build these things and how to kind of compose games and put them together, how to combine all of the different parts. And I mean, I try to do some of those videos on occasion, but they're really difficult to do in a small scale. It's really hard to boil it down to a project that, you know, fits into an hour even, let alone like 15 minutes on a YouTube video. So it's something that you're not going to see very often unless it's in, I think, a fuller scale devlog where people are going through and actually building out a full project, and you're seeing how they go through and build out that entire project with all of those systems put together. Now, I know there are a couple people that do it live on YouTube right now. I think actually I was looking through my YouTube app earlier, and Thomas Brush has a stream at, I think, noon that he's doing where he's going through, and he's on like, I think, episode 60 or something of his devlog. You can kind of get an idea of how he does it. And then, but there are a lot of other devs out there. The problem that I ran into, though, was that I don't watch very many devlogs to know which ones would be the best for this. Because mostly just because most of the time I'm developing or I'm talking to people or I'm watching other technical videos, and the devlog ones are kind of interesting for me, but they're just not the core thing that I watch because it's just not. And not that there's anything wrong with them. It's just that the stuff that I want to learn is in other videos, and I watch those for fun and stuff, not so much for the technical parts. So if any, I kind of wanted to put this up here to see if anybody in chat has some recommendations for really good devlogs where they go through some of the technical stuff. I remember Sebastian had some good ones up there before. I haven't seen them in quite a while though. It's a few years ago that I looked at those. He probably has some new ones now. But if anybody in chat or in the comments, I guess when we wrap this up, if you just leave a comment and drop it in there of a link or description of some of the other devlogs that you recommend, please drop those down in there too. Outside of that, the other thing that I would recommend is actually starting up a small group of other developers and talking to them and going through and actually sharing your stuff with them. In fact, was it 2 days ago? A buddy of mine is hosting this Orange County. They have a meetup, a local meetup, where they go through and they share their games and talk about them. I have another meetup I go to somewhat regularly where we talk about code and go through and just share the code, share projects, and talk through them with other people. I find that it's really handy and a good way to find solutions that kind of fit into your exact project, especially if it's a game that you can go in and share. Like you can actually put it out there, share it with other people, and share the code so you can dive in and let people see it and give you actual direct feedback. I find that that's extremely helpful because it literally just fits right into your code. It fits right into your game, and people can kind of see it with context and give you some of the best advice. Outside of that, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think. On the saving stuff, that's one of the most recent lessons I did in my game architecture course, but I'm trying to think of free available resources. What else is out there for this? Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious. I guess just if anybody else has something in chat, please drop it in and let us know. And I was talking about Sebastian Leg. Somebody in chat was asking. Oh, and GDC Talks. GDC Talks tend to be good. So Phil mentioned that in chat too. So GDC Talks tend to be pretty useful for giving you a good overlying idea of things and for how to build specific systems. So if you're thinking of like, I want to do a loading and saving system, looking at some GDC Talks on that would probably give you some good ideas as well. Let's see. Anything else here? I'm just going to, let's see. Yeah, best resources, definitely GDC and SIG. I agree. Those are good stuff. I'm just kind of going through looking at chat real quick. See what else we got in here. Coding adventures. Those are nice. Those are fun and interesting. I really like the like I said, the devlogs for seeing how stuff is put together bigger. On Udemy courses, somebody mentioned those. I don't know if there are any that cover advanced pattern stuff or that more architectural stuff. I would bet that there probably are. There's so many out there. There's got to be. So if anybody knows of one, or if anybody happened to make one and wants to share it, drop it in the comments, please. I'd be curious to see about that. And then somebody's mentioning Coding Train, and I haven't seen that. I'll have to check that out. So I guess I'll wrap this up with a couple more questions. I'll just look at chat for a few more minutes. We'll take a couple more questions, and then we'll get going. I don't want to keep this too long, and I think next week I'll just take some more questions. We'll hit them live, and we'll go over them. But okay, so here's a question here. Is on-call Q&A a good place to start in the gaming industry? Now, I don't know about on-call, or not Q&A, sorry. Get my words mixed up. QA, so quality assurance. So I don't know about the on-call stuff, but in general, QA is a great way to get into the game industry. If you don't have any programming experience already, or you have very light experience, getting into the game industry through the testing department or the QA department is an extremely great way to do it. It's how a lot of people that I know got started. They learned how to code after they got into QA, or they learned how to code as a side of it, or maybe they got into game design or something else from there. But a lot of people that I know went straight in from the QA department. I highly, highly recommend it. And then somebody also mentioned Charles's channel, Infallible Code. So nice. I totally agree. It is pretty nice. Let's see. We got any other questions here? I don't think. Oh, how can I change industries? Oh, yeah, from full stack to game dev. That was the first question I asked. Yeah, or the first one we hit. So that was right up at the top. Yeah, yeah, man. Well, we got that one first. You just got to rewind. All right. Well, I think that's it for the questions, and that's going to be it for this stream. I'm going to get back to recording lessons. We've got game architecture lessons coming up. couple new ones. I also have a Q&A for that for the students Sunday. I'll send out the email and schedule for that. If you're interested in that, feel free to check it out down below. And if not, make sure that you at least subscribe and hit the like button. And then if you have more questions, submit them on the same form that's down below in the link. And then I think, barring any giant emergencies, next Friday we'll go through and we'll take another 5 questions, hit them, and read them off publicly and try to answer them as best we can. And if you couldn't see the beginning, don't worry, you'll be able to rewind, replay, and all that stuff right at the end of this. All right, thanks again, everybody, for coming out here and joining me. And I guess I will see you all on Sunday. For the Game Dev show or the architecture Q&A or whatever other thing comes out before then. All right, goodbye and see you soon. Or, yeah, whatever you're supposed to say there. All right, anyway, bye.